Hi, this is John Harcher, and welcome to the Summer of Bugs here on Left Turn in Albuquerque. Well, almost, since it's not officially summer. So this will be our June Bugs episode, kicking off a 4-part look at the Bugs Bunny 80th anniversary set. Plus 4.
I knew I should have made a left turn at Albuquerque. I knew I should have taken that left turn at Albuquerque. I knew I should have taken that left turn at Albuquerque. I should have turned left at Albuquerque.
So remember I said earlier in the year that I might only do 2 episodes for this collection since it had a lot of repeats? Well, as I went over it, as it turned out, it's actually not that many from just the Blu-rays. If you add in the Golden Collection upgrades, it's around half the set, but we haven't dealt with them yet. So we're going to go ahead and do those recaps here since they're more upgraded compared to their DVD appearances. So where did this set come from? Warner's became extremely focused after ending the Platinum collections when it came to Blu-ray upgrades. They did the series of Tex Avery releases and the ones for the color Popeye ones of the 40s, both of which I hope we'll get to eventually. But they held off on Looney Tunes until this set, the Bugs Bunny 80th anniversary one. 3 Blu-ray discs and a Bugs Bunny Funko figure in a box. It was released on December 1st, 2020. It made a very nice Christmas present, speaking from experience. Originally, Warner's only wanted to do a single Blu-ray, ostensibly being an upgrade of the Essential Bugs Bunny DVD from a few years earlier. But Jerry Beck and George Felsenstein pushed for something more and got Warner's to do this, which is a pretty remarkable achievement considering where they started from. So do not take anything in these episodes as a criticism of what George and Jerry did. We wouldn't have what we have without them in their efforts. But when I first saw the set announced back in late August or early September of 2020, I thought one thing. If it's an 80th anniversary set, why not 80 cartoons? Now, knowing where they started and where they ended up, it's amazing we got what we did. I'm just going into my usual alternate universe speculation. If Warner's had the resources, what would an 80 cartoon set look like? It was pretty easy to do on one hand. All the cartoons are arranged in chronological order by release date, so I'd know where any additional cartoon would go. But the selection of those 20 additional cartoons was really tough. I don't envy what George and Jerry had to go through in deciding one tune over the other. The main thing I did not want to do was put on a cartoon that had already appeared on Blu-ray unless it was absolutely necessary. The set as released has 11 of those. Now, had they not added one that could have been replaced by another tune that would have been an upgrade, I wouldn't have included any from previous sets. In fact, you can almost view the disc 1 from Platinum Collection Volume 3 with all the Bugs Bunnies as a companion disc to this set. You had 18 Bugs Bunny tunes on that disc alone. As it is, I selected one additional Blu-ray tune to give us an even dozen. As for the rest of the 20, I picked 13 upgrades from DVD and 6 that would have at the time been new to Blu-ray. Thanks to the Collector's Choice series, we actually have 5 of those. The last one is not on digital in any form that I could find, so we'll be using an old VHS tape copy that I got a hold of. At the moment, I'd say it's probably the number 1 most wanted Bugs Bunny on Blu-ray that's not yet available, and maybe the most wanted Looney Tune overall. So we're going to break this up into 4 parts, episode 10.1 through 10.4, one for each of the imaginary discs. For anything we've done already, I'll try to add one more additional factoid or piece of trivia. I'll give the release dates for everything since it's all chronological, though on the actual disc there's one of them that's out of place by a year, so I'll put it back where it belongs. Anything we haven't done before, we'll get the full treatment, director, writer, recap, trivia, restoration, and where to find it outside of this set, with the one exception I noted. At the end, we'll go over the extras that are included on the discs, as well as what I would include for each disc as a bonus selection, hence the 4, since we're 4 years later. Plus, to go along with that, I'll give 4 more choices of what would have been included on each disc, had I really been able to do what I wanted. So today we'll start with the first 20 selections, which takes us from 1940 up through the middle of 1948. Our first selection is Elmer's Candid Camera, released on March 2nd, 1940. This has plenty of appearances through the years: Golden Collection Volume 1, Platinum Collection Volume 2, and the Bugs Bunny Essentials. It's one of Jerry's favorites, that's why it keeps showing up. We dealt with this in episode 6. To be honest, I'd actually have held off on including this one since it's not quite Bugs Bunny yet, but because of one of the additions, it would be part of a series, which we partially already kind of discussed. I'll talk about how this fits in when we get to the third in a minute or so. Next is a Wild Hare, released on July 27, 1940. Mark that date down for this year. This one, of course, was famously not included on the Golden Collections on its own. It was on there as part of the film Bugs Bunny Superstar in horribly unrestored form. It was restored in the Academy Awards set, Platinum Collection Volume 2, as well as the Bugs Bunny Essentials. We also did this in episode 6. So as a bonus, here's my little edit to include both Carole Lombard and Barbara Stanwyck in the list of actresses. I made sure to edit out the audible cut that you can hear on the tape. You'll notice a slight head stagger.
Guess who?
Eddie Lamar?
Nope.
Well, Carole Lombard? Barbara Stanwyck.
Now we come to the first of our 20 editions on the set, Elmer's Pet Rabbit, released on January 4th, 1941. This just came out a few months back on Collector's Choice Volume 3, and we dealt with it in episode 7. Remember, this one probably should have come out before Wild Hare, since Bugs' demeanor and voice aren't quite in line with how they appear in that one. Now, if you look at these last 3 cartoons, you have 3 different versions of Elmer and Bugs' or Proto-Bugs' first meeting. And since these days we're big into the whole multiverse concept, you can think of it this way. Elmer's Candid Camera is Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. Elmer's Pet Rabbit is Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. And a Wild Hare is Tom Holland's Spider-Man. Yeah, kind of a stretch, but like I've said before, I'm always trying to look at these films I've known my whole life with a different frame of reference. Our next selection is Hold the Lion, Please, from June 6, 1942, directed by Chuck Jones and written by Ted Pierce, who also does the voice of the titular lion.
Carrots are good for rabbits.
A lion sets out to prove he's king of the jungle, but runs into trouble from Bugs. But in the end, Bugs runs into trouble with Mrs. Bugs. This is the first digital debut on this set, and it's from Chuck's experimental period. You can tell by the odd skies and horizons. It has a commentary track by Greg Ford, which again probably means it may have been set for a Golden Collection inclusion, but just didn't get used. The recently departed for MGM Tex Avery is the voice of the hippo, so this must have been started in 1941.
He ain't kidding anybody. He's all washed up.
This was one that was in syndication when I was younger from the AAP package, as a lot of the pre-1948 ones were. Though, as I mentioned last time, I may have to question whether I first saw it on Channel 5 or Channel 9. I think it may have also turned up from time to time on TBS. Restoration is clean, but a little on the dull side. Next is Bugs Bunny Gets the Boid, released on July 11, 1942. This one can also be found on Golden Collection Volume 1 and Platinum Collection Volume 2. There's a lot like those on this disc. We did this in episode 6 with all the Beakies. It turns out he actually sort of had his own theme song. Remember, they found the original title music to the second Beaky, the Bashful Buzzard, and it sounded a lot like the title music from this one. Sadly, almost exactly 2 years after this tune came out, and 80 years ago next month, on July 9, 1944, Beaky's voice actor Kent Rogers died in a Navy training accident in Florida a few weeks before his 21st birthday. Very talented young man. It's on to the next year, and Super Rabbit, released on April 3rd, 1943, directed by Chuck Jones and written by Ted Pierce. Thanks to some super carrots, Bugs transforms into the Rabbit of Tomorrow and battles Cottontail Smith in the heart of Texas. This has a memorable segment where Bugs breaks into a cheer.
Brick-a-brack-a firecrackers, this boom ba! Bugs Bunny, rah, rah, rah!
But was even more memorable for its ending where Bugs turns into a real Superman, a U.S. Marine.
From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. Sorry, fellas, I can't play with you anymore. I got some important work to do.
The Corps was so thrilled by the reference, they made Bugs an honorary Marine, retiring at the end of the war with the rank of Master Sergeant. This was on practically once a week when I was a kid, as opposed to the Fleischer Superman cartoons, which this one spoofs mightily.
Faster than a speeding bullet. More powerful than a locomotive. Able to leap the tallest buildings.
That were almost never shown around my way until Cartoon Network existed. Oddly enough, Ted Pierce actually wrote one of the Fleischer Superman cartoons, The Arctic Giant. Now, funny thing is, I had a little plastic plane that was missing the canopy, so I always thought it was the one in this tune. Now, this is a Blu-ray debut, at least as far as the Looney Tunes collection goes. It might be on the 1978 Superman Blu-rays. This was previously on DVD on Golden Collection Volume 3. Restoration, again, is nice, but this one is particularly grainy. Next up is Jack Wabbit and the Beanstalk, released on June 12, 1943, directed by Friz Freleng and written by Michael Maltese. It's the first of two takes Bugs did on the Jack and the Beanstalk story. We'll talk about the other one later, though we've actually already talked about it. I think the one pop I did was right around the same time as this, but this one is in color. Bugs is already at the top of the Beanstalk chopping down giant carrots when the giant comes in to see what's going on. Some gags were repeated in the later tune, like this one about the glass. This is another one from syndication. I don't remember it much from TBS. It might have been there. It makes its Blu-ray debut here. The restoration here is also very clean and the closest to being sharp looking among these earlier ones. On to the next year with What's Cookin Doc, released on January 9, 1944, directed by Bob Clampett, with an assist from Friz Freleng, and written by Michael Sassonoff. Bugs is at the Academy Awards banquet, thinking for sure he'll win, but loses to
James K.
The rabbit then goes on to make his case to the crowd by showing a clip from Hiawatha's rabbit hunt called Little Hiawatha Here. Now, there's a bit of confusion about this one. It didn't appear on a previous Looney Tunes collection, but did make an appearance as a bonus tune on the Academy Awards set, even though it wasn't nominated. This is its Blu-ray debut. Cagney actually did win the award for Best Actor for his portrayal of George M. Cohan in 1942's Yankee Doodle Dandy, though, to be honest, he probably won it just for these 10 seconds alone. Owing to this, it was probably produced right after he won it in mid-1943. The restoration of the cartoon portion is nice, and the Star is Born stock footage looks absolutely spectacular. We have Bugs Bunny and the Three Bears up next, released on February 26, 1944. Chuck Jones and Ted Pierce take on the old fairy tale with a small father bear, a giant baby bear, and Mama Bear, who gets the hots for Bugs.
Tell me more about my eyes.
It's very much like a Tex Avery one. He actually did do a Three Bears cartoon of his own, which I think we'll get to on the Golden Collections. This one's a little more controlled. As we've seen, Chuck returned to the Bears for a later series of cartoons with Billy Bletcher and Stan Freberg stepping in to take the voices. This is another one that's been in syndication for years. So I saw it when I was little. It also makes its blue debut here, having previously been on Golden Collection Volume 1. We're back to the nice looking but a little dull on the restoration side. We go back to Bob Clampett and Hare Ribbin, released on June 24th, 1944, written by Lou Lilly. A sort of bizarre reworking of Tex Avery's Heckling Hare, which I skipped over, but I didn't. We'll see later. But this time the dog is patterned after radio's Mad Russian of the 30s.
You know something? I think that was the rabbit.
Comedian Bert Gordon, not to be confused with special effects meister Bert I. Gordon, is another one of the characters who made a big impression on the gang of termite terrorists.
Do you do? Do you mean it?
And therefore us, but I can pretty confidently say I never saw him anywhere outside of these cartoons, with the possible exception of the old Dick Van Dyke episode with all the old radio stars. He was in that one. I saw all the Dick Van Dykes. Now, oddly, most of this actually takes place underwater, so I don't know how they're breathing. Now, as well as the released version, we also get a copy of the original version with several changes, like a longer sniffing sequence, and instead of the dog committing suicide, Bugs actually shoots him. Both were included on Golden Collection Volume 5, so it's a blue debut for both of these. Only the released one is fully restored, so you can tell the difference between the two of them. And the restoration is pretty sharp at that. You know, Bob liked to have things pop out, so it shows. Next is another Clampett, the Old Grey Hare, released on October 28, 1944. This one has been everywhere. Golden Collection Volume 5, Platinum Collection Volume 1, and the Bugs Bunny Essentials. And we went over it in Episode 2. As we've gone over these, have you noticed the Clampetts all have these red backgrounds and just writing on it, and that's all the credits? It's like all the same. Now, we started off the disc with 3 versions of Bugs and Elmer's first meeting. As we talked about back in Episode 2, this was the first of Bugs and Elmer's meetings when they're like really small. We also get another variation of this on a later set we'll be dealing with by the end of the summer. We did mention it in the Boomerang rotation. Now, the set as released does not include any tunes from 1945, so I corrected that oversight with 2 cartoons. The first is the Unruly Hare, released on February 10th, 1945. We dealt with this Frank Tashlin directed short all the way back in Episode 1 due to its appearance on Collector's Choice Volume 1. Frankly, this one should have been on the Golden Collection since Tashlin only did 2 Bugses, but at least it's out now. The other is the one really major omission on the set and so far of all the shorts released on Blu-ray. Hare Trigger was released on May 5th, 1945, directed by Friz Freleng and written by Michael Maltese. This short is the first appearance of a minor side character, Yosemite Sam. Bugs confronts the diminutive desperado on a train and along the way gives someone a catchphrase.
So long, Screwy. See you in St. Louis.
I wonder if the train was on its way to Berwyn. This took until Golden Collection Volume 6 to hit digital and, as I mentioned, still has not appeared on Blu-ray. However, it has gotten a full HD restoration somewhere. From my notes, it didn't look like it was on HBO Max, where it likely should have been, but I did get my hands on an HD copy from someplace. It might have been the Netherlands. Oddly, with its lack of current availability, this is one I've seen my whole life, up until Looney Tunes went away, We moved to 1946 and back to the actual collection for Baseball Bugs, released on February 2nd of that year. You'd think they would have held off on this for another couple months until baseball season. This is another one that appeared everywhere, Volume 1 for both the Golden and Platinum collections, as well as the Essential, and we did it back in Episode 2. Now, IMDb has the announcer as Ted Pierce.
It's been a one-sided knockdown, drag-em-out ball game right from the very first inning.
They also have Frank Graham listed as doing voices. I thought Frank might have actually been the announcer because I didn't hear his voice anywhere else in the tune, but then I heard this laugh. So since Frank was the master of laughs, I guess that's him. For the next one, we'll go back to the editions for the other Frank Tashlin, Hare Remover, released on March 3rd, 1946, written by Warren Foster and Melvin Miller. There's no director's credit on here since it was well after Tashlin left the studio, so it's possible Robert McKimson may have done some work on this. Elmer tries to experiment on bugs in his lab, but it doesn't go as expected. Now, try getting the signs correct as they flash up. I never knew the phrase bats in the belfry until I was over at my friend's house and I thought the last one was dingbat, and my friend's mom let me know what the right one was. Now, like I said, since I was a kid, this was an old syndication one, and I must have seen it back in my Wallington days because this image here, Elmer as the devil, kind of reminds me of the old Cookin Doc paint cans that my grandfather had all over the cellar. They were a company out of Newark, so it was very big in North Jersey in the 60s and 70s. We'll talk about another North Jersey institution next episode for one of the additional tunes. Now, Hare Remover was on DVD on Golden Collection Volume 3. Restoration was of the nice but grainy variety. Would be nice to get the full HD upgrade available. It was on HBO Max, but it's not there at the moment. The next one on the set is Hare Raising Hare, released on May 25th, 1946. Another one that's appeared across the board. Golden Collection Volume 1, Platinum Collection Volume 3, and the Essential, and we dealt with it in Episode 7. Now, due to that appearance, this is the one tune on the set I would have not included and selected another one to cover the appearance of a certain character. I'll go ahead and include that one next episode, and we'll talk about it more when we get there. Now, this is a Vital Bugs Bunny cartoon, but since it was on that catch-all disc 1 of Platinum Collection Volume 3, I'd have opted to avoid the double dip. But since they included this one, I felt okay including one more selection from that disc. It'll also be on next episode, and it's also a Vital Bugs Bunny tune. Next is Racketeet Rabbit, released on September 14, 1946, directed by Friz Freleng and written by Michael Maltese. Bugs hides out in an old mansion on a rainy night, but his evening is interrupted by Rocky and Hugo, specifically modeled after Edward G. Robinson and Peter Lorre.
Well, we got rid of those mugs.
They make me laugh.
Dick Nelson does Robinson while Mel takes Lorre. Mel said he never liked to do impersonations, but did quite a few over the years, the occasional Peter Lorre and Lou Costello in the Babbitt and Costello cartoons. This is another syndicated AAP one, and it makes its digital debut here. This is really one of the cleanest restorations on the disc, nice and crisp throughout. Our last 1946 tune is an extra, and another one I'm a little surprised didn't make the cut. Rhapsody Rabbit was released on November 9th of that year, also directed by Friz Freleng and written by Pierce and Maltese. Bugs sets out to play Liszt's Hungarian Rhapsody No. 2, with the composer getting a shout-out.
Who? Franz Liszt. Never heard of him.
But is constantly interrupted by a mouse. Friz had already used this music in Rhapsody and Ribbits a few years earlier, and would also be used in the Tom and Jerry cartoon, The Cat Concerto. A pianist being pestered by a mouse while trying to play this piece of music. Wow, what a coincidence! Or was it? I won't go into this here. We'll do a little rundown of it when we do the Oscar collection next year, since Tom and Jerry got the Oscar for theirs. Rhapsody Rabbit was on Golden Collection Volume 2 on DVD. The restoration was nice there. The HD one should be nicer. Again, it was on HBO Max, but isn't there now. Now, there were 4 Bugs Bunny cartoons in 1947. A Hare Grows in Manhattan, Rabbit Transit, Easter Eggs, and Slick Hare. Of these, I'd possibly have slated Manhattan or Slick Hare for inclusion, but since these were just on Platinum Collection Volume 3, I'm okay with not including them here. So we move on to 1948 and our final edition of this quote-unquote disc. Rabbit Punch was released on April 10th, 1948, directed by Chuck Jones and also written by Maltese and Pierce. Bugs gets into the ring for 110 rounds against the Crusher. Pretty daring ending by having Bugs on the verge of death, and then he just cuts the film. This one was in syndication along with its semi-remake Bunny Hugged. That was on Platinum Collection Volume 3. This one is on digital via Golden Collection Volume 3, but still not on Blue. Probably should have been on here. The DVD restoration is okay, but noticeably duller than a few of the previous ones. Again, it was on HBO Max at first, but it's not there now. The last of our 20 selections for our imaginary disc 1 is another one on the actual disc 1. Bugs Bunny Rides Again, released on June 12, 1948, directed by Friz Freleng, and once again written by Pearson Maltese. This is a return to Yosemite Sam's debut in the Old West after sending him to the high seas for his second appearance in Buccaneer Bunny. This time the two battle whether the town is big enough for the two of them and end up in a Star-Lord Ronin dance-off. We'll be seeing this animation again very soon. The short was originally released with this line,
Yeah, Yosemite Sam, the roughest, toughest He-Man, stuffest hombre has ever crossed the Rio Grande. And I don't mean Mahatma Gandhi.
but after the Indian leader's assassination, they changed it to this.
And I ain't no mamby-pamby.
This is a blue debut, but previously on Golden Collection Volume 2. It was in syndication all the time. The restoration is crystal clear. So that's our 20 selections for our hypothetical disc 1. You could see with the list here how George and Jerry had to make trade-offs on the actual set. Even with our expansion, we're still only able to get on a certain amount of things. We're not able to get everything we'd like. You know, taking things like previous releases and double dipping avoidance into account. But this gives you a pretty good overview of Bugs' almost first decade. Next time, we'll see how Bugs evolved and how his directors changed how they handled him as well. Next episode, we'll look at Bugs' best from 1948 to 1953, touching on some famous co-stars and the inclusion of one that still has yet to hit digital. I'm John Hunter. Thanks for watching.